They called him a killer. They dragged him through the village square. They locked him away like a dangerous criminal. But there was one problem. The man they accused had the mind of a child, and the only person who believed in his innocence was his little daughter. In the quiet village of Umuasa lived a man named Duru. Duru was different from the other men in the village. Though he was a grown man, his mind was gentle and simple, almost like that of a child. Some villagers mocked him, some laughed whenever he passed, but Duru never held anger in his heart. To him, the world was still a beautiful place, and in that world, there was one person he loved more than anything: his little daughter, Munachi. Munachi was only 7 years old, but she was the light of Duru's life. Every morning, Duru would walk her to school, holding her small hand tightly as though she were the most precious treasure in the world. And to Munachi, her father was her hero. She didn't see a foolish man like the villagers did. She saw a kind heart, a loving father, a man who would carry her on his shoulders and make her laugh even on the saddest days. But one terrible afternoon, everything changed. The daughter of a wealthy chief in the village was found lying unconscious near the stream. There were bruises on her body, and beside her was Duru. Before he could even explain what happened, the villagers began shouting. He did it. He attacked her. He must be punished. Fear spread through the crowd like wildfire. Duru tried to speak, but his words stumbled over themselves. His confused eyes searched the faces around him, but no one wanted to listen, except one voice crying desperately from the back of the crowd. "Leave my father alone!" It was Munachi. Her small voice trembled with fear. "My father didn't do it," she cried, but the villagers were already blinded by anger. That evening, Duru was dragged through the village square like a criminal, and before the sun set, they locked him behind the cold iron bars of the village prison. As the heavy door slammed shut, Munachi stood outside the cell, gripping the bars with her tiny hands. Tears streamed down her cheeks. "Papa," she whispered. Duru looked as he thought through the bars. Even in that moment, he forced a small smile, because the last thing he would ever want for his daughter was to see him cry. Days passed inside the cell. Duru did not understand why he was there. Sometimes he would sit quietly on the cold floor, staring at the walls, confused. But every evening, one small ray of light came into that dark place. Munachi, the little girl, would run to the prison gate after school every day. Sometimes she brought roasted corn. Sometimes she brought him mangoes she picked from the trees. And sometimes she brought nothing but her smile. "Papa, don't worry," she would whisper through the bars. "I will bring you home." The prison guards watched the two with pity. Some of them even wiped tears from their eyes because they knew something was wrong with the story. Duru was too gentle, too harmless, too innocent to hurt anyone, but the village chiefs had already made their decision, and no one dared to question them. Meanwhile, the wealthy chief, whose daughter had been found near the stream, demanded justice. His anger shook the entire village. If that man is not punished, then there is no justice in this land. And so the days turned into weeks. Then one afternoon, something unexpected happened. The chief's daughter suddenly woke up. The villagers rushed to the chief's compound. People waited anxiously outside his compound. Finally, the doctor examined her. The girl slowly opened her eyes. Her weak voice trembled as she began to speak. The chief leaned closer. "Child, who did this to you?" he asked. Tears formed in her eyes as she whispered something that froze everyone in place. "I slipped near the rocks by the stream and fell into the water. I could not swim. I was drowning." She paused, struggling to breathe. "But a man jumped into the stream and pulled me out." The chief's voice trembled. "Who was that man?" "Duru," she said. Shock spread across the entire compound. The man they had accused, the man they had beaten and thrown into prison, had actually saved her life. News spread through Umuasa like wildfire. Villagers began to whisper among themselves. They had punished an innocent man, and the only person who believed him from the beginning was a little girl, Munachi. When the prison gates finally opened that evening, Munachi ran faster than the wind. "Papa!" She threw her arms around Duru, hugging him tightly. Duru looked at his daughter, confused but smiling. "Are we going home?" he asked gently. Munachi nodded through her tears. "Yes, Papa, we are going home." That evening, the entire village of Umuasa gathered in the village square. The chiefs sat quietly on their stools. No one spoke for a long moment. Shame hung in the air like a heavy cloud. The same villagers who once shouted "Killer" now stood with their heads bowed. Finally, the oldest chief slowly stood up. His voice was deep and heavy with regret. "Today," he said, "our village has learned a painful lesson." He turned towards Duru. "We judged a man before hearing the truth." The chief lowered his head slightly, a rare sign of humility. "Duru, we wronged you." The crowd murmured in sadness, but Duru simply looked around, confused by the seriousness of the moment. Then he smiled softly. "I only wanted to help the girl," he said gently. His simple words pierced the hearts of everyone present. Many villagers began to cry because the man they had treated like a criminal carried no hatred in his heart. At that moment, Munachi stepped forward and held her father's hand proudly. She looked around at the villagers with quiet strength. "My father is a good man," she said. "He always has been." Silence filled the square. Then, slowly, someone began to clap. Then another, and another. Soon, the entire village square echoed with applause. Not for a hero of strength, but for a man with a pure and forgiving heart. Duru looked down at his daughter and smiled. To him, none of the shouting or apology mattered, because the only thing he truly cared about was holding the small hand of the little girl who never stopped believing in him. And from that day forward, whenever the people of Umuasa spoke about justice, they remembered one important truth. Sometimes, the purest hearts in the world belong to the people everyone misunderstands.